Hey! Recently on the Patreon, we looked at the second ever direct-to-video Scooby film, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost, which introduced the characters of the Hex Girls. And prior to that, we also looked at The Legend of the Vampire, the 2003 direct-to-video film that reunited the gang with the band, albeit with an oddly whitewashed Luna. As you can see here from even the Witch's Ghost concept art, she is indeed black. But also in 2003, there was another memorable appearance of the band, featuring whitewashed Luna, that we haven't yet looked at. And after seeing their other earliest appearances, it seems as good a time as any to look at this one on its own as I've wanted to for a while. After all, we just looked at the Valentine's Day episode of the series this episode comes from as well. Today we're looking at What's New Scooby-Doo, Season 2, Episode 5, The Vampire Strikes Back. Originally aired October 18th, 2003, the week before the Halloween episode we recently looked at. If the title sounds extra familiar, it is indeed a pun based on the Star Wars film The Empire Strikes Back, as episode writer Jordana Arkin's husband was a big Star Wars fan. This episode's iconography was made even more prominent to me growing up because it was used as the basis, with the titular vampire present, for the cover art of the Volume 3 DVD. The vampire also remains present for the slightly more modern, budget vampire-themed DVD. I picked this up for the Vampire Bats episode once, only to be disappointed with how bad the transfer was compared to every other release. As for the Hex Girls, I'll leave their introduction to what I just did on the Patreon for them, and for The Legend of the Vampire, as it's very safe to bet they won't need one for you anyway. There's a decent amount to talk about with this episode, so let's get into it.
Now you can own one of the coolest Halloween DVDs ever.
So like there's a creepy castle, a vampire on the loose. I think it's time for us cowards to do what cowards do best. Run, Scoob!
You could own What's New Scooby-Doo Halloween Blues and Clues on DVD.
We open up on a dark and stormy night, this entrance showing the family name for Teskew, which leads to a dreary castle. We can't stay scared too long though, as when this coffin opens, we're welcomed by Thorn of the Hex Girls. She jumps into action with Dusk and Luna to perform the new original song for the episode, Petrified Bride. And unfortunately, though I can't show it at its worst, the animation on them is a deeply disappointing downgrade from their film debut I just spoke about. The song itself is co-written by both our aforementioned episode writer, along with Rich Dickerson, who wrote on most of the original songs on this show, including the iconic theme song itself. He also wrote songs for some of the movies, like Legend of the Vampire, Monster of Mexico, and Pirates Ahoy. The visuals make it clear this is a music video being filmed, and as for the song in question, well, it's not one of the best in their discography. I don't ever see people talk about this one, and it's probably because it's just not memorable. The only superior thing to write home about is the top-notch vocals the girls themselves bring. The director of the video seems pretty pleased with himself, and What's New aficionados likely already recognize him. JJ Hakimoto is one of the few recurring characters of this show, previously appearing in Season 1, Episode 2, 3 Destruction. The performance is unfortunately interrupted by a figure in the shadowy window, jumping to reveal our titular vampire. He chases after the girls, Dusk trips and falls, and it seems the undead monster is about to have his way, broken to us only by the theme song. The gang meanwhile find their vacation taking a dark turn, headed through an eerie Transylvanian village to get to the castle the Hex Girls are filming at. Daphne is hoping to be an extra in the music video, the five having been invited to watch the process. So we're establishing at least one of their prior film meetings is canon here. Makes sense given that Daphne's home matches her zombie island home. Love the detail of passing by this dentist office owned by someone named Vlad, considering Vlad the Impaler is called the real Dracula. The castle is definitely giving creepy as they get closer, and the rickety bridge they have to cross is no less scary, even collapsing under them. Sure, they almost die, but Fred counts their survival as a win.
Should I drive or what?
Dusk inside is upset they're still continuing the shoot after barely escaping the attack we previously saw. Thorn gets surprisingly nasty toward her and says they're moving forward with or without her, so she walks. Daphne speculates the fight is because Dusk is leaving to go solo, having heard it in a gossip magazine. Thorn and Luna meanwhile come up to embrace their friends, saying they could use their help, which Daphne jumps to assume meaning she needs a costume. Instead, they reveal the vampire that's halted production after chasing them. Thelma assures them they're on the case, and Fred suggests he knows what to do first.
Split up?
Nope. Set a trap.
What? But you always want us to split up before you set a trap.
Really? I never noticed that.
Wow, subversive. As such, Fred explains the trap he's put together, just leaving live bait, which the boys refuse. Fred, however, points out it's the Hex Girls the vampire went after. Thelma says the girls are too scared after the last attack though, so he says they just need someone to look like them, giving her a tight look. And so she's dressed up as Luna, which only works in this episode because they've made Luna as unusually pasty as Velma. With her skin corrected now, even a vampire wouldn't have bought this one.
Why does she get to wear the dress?
Because Shaggy doesn't have the hips for it.
You really do have to admire their dedication to putting either Shaggy or Scooby in drag whenever they have the opportunity. Anyway, now Velma has to sing.
Almost wed, but I fled. Almost wed, but I fled. Almost wed, but I fled. Yeah.
I don't think he's a fan. He chases her anyway. She gets him to run into the trap, and they successfully capture and finish tying him up, shocking even Velma that we're done this early. Rather than an unmasking of the usual type, Daphne uses her makeup remover to reveal our culprit to be...
Who is that?
Thorne asks why a cutie like him would want to ruin their video, but she and I must have very different taste in men if that's cute. A man named Owen DeCastle walks in and identifies the culprit as Steve Fortescue. Before we get to what he says, Mr. DeCastle, whose name clearly sounds like owns the castle, does literally own the castle, so that's creative. But the really noticeable and weird thing about him is that he's clearly meant to be visually identical to Vincent Price, especially in how he portrays Vincent Van Ghoul in Scooby. This itself is odd to have a Price caricature and not have it actually be meant to be some form of him literally. But what's more odd is his voice. Actor James Arnold Taylor, who also voices Steve, just has him sound like an average dude beyond the accent. There's no attempt to have him even remotely sound like Price. So it's super bizarre and off-putting to have Vincent Price visually speak and not sound like himself. Anyway, Owen says he bought the castle from Steve's parents, and that his ancestor Baron Fortescue was a vampire. Steve says he stole the castle though, and is profiting off his legacy. Owen starts to take Steve away to the authorities, but Fred reveals the bridge collapsed earlier, which means everyone is stuck here tonight. Owen has an idea about where to keep them, so we start down into the castle deeper, so deep that there's a skeleton, where we find the dungeon Steve is to be locked in, but he warns that the real vampire will now come. Owen rings for someone, and this creeper named Renfield walks out. Firstly, his name comes from Renfield, Dracula's devoted servant in the Bram Stoker novel. Also relevant, he was played by Dwight Fry in the 1931 film. And that same year, Fry played Fritz in the film Frankenstein, the character most people associate with what everyone calls Igor, which this character is also clearly meant to be. However, rather than model him after Fry, Renfield's face and voice are modeled after actor Peter Lorre, who I feel like I brought up like 50 times lately, but it's because Scooby references him like this so often. Pairing Peter Lorre and Vincent Price, however, is not so odd, as the two did actually work together. Renfield takes everyone to their rooms, and says he's given his whole life to this castle that used to be so splendid and filled with beautiful music, loudly expressing his distaste for the music the Hex Girls have brought. I think the gang got the memo. As the boys look at their bed though, they seem occupied. Yeah, I'd take the floor as well. As the night passes, a wolf eerily howls, and a flash of thunder and lightning wakes Daphne. The window is empty until a flash that reveals the vampire, and genuinely between you and me, this visual actually spooked me as an adult right now watching this. The vampire closing in on Daph, helpless in her bed. We'll be right back.
Halloween is here, and the whole gang gets dressed up and dressed down. In 4 all-new scary adventures from the hit TV show, What's New, Scooby-Doo? Halloween Booze and Clues on DVD and video. Grab your garlic.
Garlic?
Because a very scary vampire is on the loose. Plus, get more ultimate DVD extras, like the Haunted Backlot, as you take a scary tour with Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, and uncover what goes bump in the lot at Warner Brothers Studios. Also get the insider scoop on what it takes to be one of Scooby-Doo's famous foes. Look for What's New, Scooby-Doo, Halloween Booze and Clues on DVD and video.
The others hear Daphne scream and rush into her room, and the boys slip on some clothes and just bounce the vampire out of the window. Kinda anticlimactic, but looking out the window, the vampire is gone, and just as fast, Dusk comes in to ask what's happening. Daphne is certain she saw Steve, but he should still be locked in the dungeon. Sure enough, Steve is in his cell, not having left. Scooby gives us a suggestion of a real vampire, Shaggy wondering if Steve himself became a bat, but Velma believes someone is letting Steve out normally and working together.
Now let's split up and look for clues.
I knew that would come up sooner or later.
The boys find the kitchen and try to make anti-vampire garlic snacks, but get a spook from Renfield. The trio on their end hear terrified screams, and inside their room, Thorne and Luna say something happened to Dusk, who's disappeared in a flash of light, and now a bat is left. Daphne believes Dusk must be pretending to turn into a bat since she wants to leave the band according to that gossip magazine. Fred meanwhile correctly finds the bookcase to reveal a hidden entrance. Up in what seems like an attic, Velma opens a trunk that leads to a horrifying moment of bugs crawling out and all over the three of them. She then finds a birth certificate with a smudged name that seems to read Stew Fortescue. Before they can think too hard, they hear weird noises and run to find Thorn and Luna surrounded by spirited nightmares. But JJ comes into frame as they realize this was part of the music video shoot, and he seems suspiciously eager to capture the vampire on film and get to shoot whatever he wants after.
In a castle, no one can hear you scream.
I see he's still quoting movie taglines. The vampire seems to feel his desire, unfortunately for him, so everyone scatters, and we get a repeat of Petrified Bride playing again for our chase song. We have all kinds of silly moments like Velma giving him a kite to electrocute him, and also Fred trying to fence using a candelabra. The crazier part is Daphne getting down on all fours to trip the vampire. Everyone gets together in the graveyard, and Fred assures them they're safe, but an ominous shadow rises behind him, and a puff of smoke shoots out, Fred vanishing entirely. All that's left is a bat, just like when Dusk vanished. Scoob suggests the bat is Fred, turned by the vampire, but Velma still isn't so sure of it, only that it's time to end this. Looking for clues inside, Velma seems to find a picture of Steve standing in front of a mirror. Daphne feels this means he can't be the vampire if he casts a reflection, but Velma also believes this is the last piece of the puzzle. This just leaves catching the vampire, making Velma miss Fred wanting to do the trap now. But Daphne decides to follow the romantic story of the vampire searching for his bride, and take over the job in his place. While the boys chase Bat Fred, Daphne waits in her wedding dress for the vampire, but he seems to be a no-show. She also asks Velma if she really believes this is a vampire, exposing the garlic she brought just in case. Love that. They hear the ominous undead, so Velma pushes the bride back out, only for the boys to fall on her. They then run past, knocking Velma over, who loses her glasses. As she searches for them, the vampire appears, and Daphne calls in terror for the net, but he commands the window shut, locking her out with nobody to help. As he closes in, a shadowy figure on top of the castle appears, jumping down and spooking the vampire until he falls off the edge. Daphne sees it was Fred, escaping from the attic he was trapped in, the vampire now hanging on for his afterlife. Velma comes out asking where the vampire went, and when they look back down, he's vanished. Daphne backs up in fear. The vampire revealed to us behind the flowing curtains, which really reminds me of the similar shot in 2024's Nosferatu. It's really atmospheric. Before he can do anything, though, Velma tosses her garlic necklace, and the vampire steps on it, tripping and now reaching game over. Dusk joins everyone, confirming that she was locked up like Fred, so Daphne prepares to remove the makeup again.
Don't worry, it's hypoallergenic.
Underneath, our reveal this time is also Steve. Fred wonders who it is that's been helping him escape his cell, and perhaps surprisingly, perhaps obviously, Owen and Wrenchfield bring Steve himself out. Velma reveals what she figured out from that childhood photo, as this wasn't a mirror, and Steve looks identical to the vampire because the two are twin brothers, and that birth certificate was likely that of Steve's brother. Dusk asks why they attacked their video shoot, so Velma proposes that they wanted to scare everyone off to ruin Owen's business, which they confirm with their meddling kids line. With that, JJ properly introduces the Hex Girls, and perhaps the highlight of the episode, we end with them doing a cover of the What's New series theme song. As everyone watches the video film, Dusk even digs into her softer side to kiss Scooby.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
And that's The Vampire Strikes Back. For the first TV appearance of the Hex Girls, I suppose it's not terrible. They're honestly not in it that much, but they're in their later appearances even less typically, and we get 2 songs including their version of the theme song, so it's not too bad. The only bad thing really is the whitewashing of Luna. It really stands out as a lover of the band, but Luna herself is fine as far as the characterization. I don't love the positioning of Dusk leaving the band as a plot device, even if it's only a rumor. I didn't love Dusk and Thorn clashing in last year's A Rogue Thorn novel either. It kinda makes me sad that it's always Dusk that seems to be put in that position. It doesn't feel right to me either of these times. Bringing back JJ for a recurring and familiar face is a nice touch for their music video though. Regardless of any issues, this was a big event for fans when this aired, getting even more of these iconic divas. And we even got them in gothic bride attire to mix it up. They're a little all over the place, but I also love the classic vampire and horror references in the episode. Vincent Price's lookalike not sounding like him makes that somewhat off-putting and confused, but the episode has the right spirit. Everything going on with Wrenchfield is full of Easter eggs for real lovers of horror to pick up on, while kids will see or hear the iconography and get the same gist. The vampire is also surprisingly effective. There was that one moment that genuinely gave me a bit of a fright that certainly doesn't typically happen with this much safer and toned down iteration, and the scene in the climax with the curtain is beautifully done. Twin brothers making it seem like the vampire is real and he's also escaping by turning into a bat is also a nice twist with enough setup littered throughout the episode to believe it. And Renfield and Owen as a pair certainly are suspicious enough to try and throw us off. I also like Daphne taking the initiative to catch him at the end, also fulfilling how she's been dying to get into the costume the whole episode. That entire climax really does have classic horror vibes, just like Nosferatu pulled from, and it adds a level of atmosphere that some episodes of the show are lacking. And the design with him on the DVD volume cover certainly was one of the ones that always stuck in my memory. Looking back on this one, it's for sure a worthwhile watch from this sometimes underrated series. The Hex Girls are just a bonus. Of course, there are still more episodes they appeared in, and maybe someday we'll look at their other moments, since we've already covered their 2 released films and all-new novel ahead of this. As for this one, I've kept you long enough. I just covered the Valentine's Day episode of the show, like I said, if you want to watch that. It's solid even outside of the holiday. And on Patreon, I just covered the Witch's Ghost movie and an exclusive deep dive as thanks to supporters. You can support the channel there yourself and get that, the exclusive Zombie Island video, and more, plus other future exclusives, if you want to help keep things going. Like this video and subscribe for whatever comes next, etc. I'll see ya whenever the next video comes out. Bye!